I overheard Heather whispering about which nursing home she planned to send me to while we were setting up our beach chairs for the family vacation. The words hit me like a cold draft through the palm trees lining the resort boardwalk. I paused, letting my fingers brush over the smooth surface of the wicker chair as if testing reality. The sun was warm on my shoulders, the ocean humming softly in the background, children laughing in the distance. And yet the air between Heather and me had turned electric, charged with a secret she thought I would never hear. I didn't flinch. I didn't call her out. I just smiled lightly, a small, controlled curve of my lips, and carried the tray of drinks past her, letting the clink of glass punctuate the space with normalcy. No one else noticed, or if they did, they chose to remain blissfully unaware. Daniel was helping unpack the cooler, his back turned as he balanced the sandwiches on a napkin, and the rest of the family wandered toward the shoreline, collecting seashells and taking photos. Heather glanced around nervously, adjusting her sunglasses, as if sensing that the calm in my movements was a warning in itself. I took a slow breath, feeling the grains of sand between my toes, grounding myself. I thought of the small acts over the years, the birthdays I had organized, the dinners I had prepared, the family trips I had planned, each effort a thread weaving our lives together. And yet here she was, plotting to diminish me, to erase my presence as though it had no value. I folded my hands over the tray, steadying them, and let my gaze wander over the horizon where the sky kissed the sea. The sound of seagulls overhead seemed louder now, marking time in a rhythm that only I could feel. I recalled my own mother, who had always counseled patience, who had whispered that strength is not in confrontation, but in quiet observation. I took another step toward the cabana, placing the tray down with precision, each movement deliberate, showing nothing of the storm inside. Heather's shadow fell across the sand, shifting slightly as she paced, unaware that every subtle gesture she made was catalogued in the quiet recesses of my mind. I walked past her, carrying my sun hat in my hand, and arranged it neatly on the lounge chair, aligning it just so, a silent declaration of order amidst the chaos she intended. I let the sun warm my face and closed my eyes briefly, tasting the salty air, feeling the breeze lift the edges of my silver hair, reminding me that I was present, that I was watching, and that I had noticed. No words passed between us, only the soft whisper of the ocean and the measured steps of my own resolve. I carried a small notebook from the beach bag and pretended to check the packing list, each line of text absorbing my focus, yet cataloging every glance Heather cast, every slight tremor of her hand as she spoke to herself. I let a slow smile touch my lips once more, not of amusement, but of measured patience, the kind that only comes from decades of watching, learning, and quietly understanding the dynamics of those who think they can manipulate. I remained calm, letting the family play around me, feeling the warmth of the sun, the soft texture of the sand, and the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore, all the while noting every calculated move Heather made. My plan was not to confront, not yet, but to observe, to let the truth reveal itself in time. Each sip of iced tea I poured, each sandwich I set down, became a deliberate act of presence, a statement that I was still here, still in control of my own space, still watching and waiting for the moment when patience would transform into clarity. I breathed deeply, embracing the ordinary scenes of a family enjoying the sun, while beneath it, the undercurrents of betrayal swirled, invisible to everyone but me. I let the breeze play across my skin, heard the soft call of a child asking a parent to help with a sandcastle, and smiled again softly, knowing that each moment counted, that the quiet attention to every detail was my armor, and that when the right time came, every secret would unfold exactly as it should. The morning started quietly, with the soft hum of the air conditioning blending with the distant waves crashing along the shoreline. Margaret moved along the balcony, her hands resting lightly on the wooden railing, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin and the cool breeze lifting the edges of her light linen dress. Daniel was arranging towels by the pool chairs, humming softly, unaware of the mental notes Margaret was taking of Heather's movements in the kitchen below. Each smile Heather offered the rest of the family seemed rehearsed, too polished, too careful, as if measuring every gesture for some hidden purpose. Margaret took a deep breath, letting the scent of salt and sunscreen fill her lungs, grounding herself in the ordinary. Despite the tension, she could feel coiled in the air like an unspoken truth. She carried a tray of fresh fruit down the steps, her footsteps soft against the deck, counting each step, marking each sound. Heather looked up briefly, her eyes darting toward Margaret, and then away, a brief flicker of unease crossing her expression before it was masked again by that same polished smile. Margaret placed the tray on the table and pretended to adjust the napkins, a small, deliberate motion, as she cataloged Heather's subtle reactions, her posture, the way she held her hands over the plates, as though trying to assert a silent control over the space. She noticed Daniel glance briefly at the interaction but say nothing, absorbed in setting out glasses and silverware, the clinking soft and steady, a rhythm that Margaret matched internally to pace her thoughts. She thought of every family trip, every vacation planned meticulously, each picnic, each sunset moment she had coordinated, and how Heather's words had threatened to reduce those memories to insignificance. Margaret sipped her iced tea, letting the cool liquid slide down her throat, counting the seconds, letting each heartbeat remind her of her presence, her awareness, her agency. She moved to the edge of the lounge area, brushing a strand of silver hair behind her ear, scanning the family for any further hints of deception or manipulation. The children ran toward the water, shrieking in delight, oblivious to the tension threading through the adults. Margaret smiled faintly, acknowledging the innocence, the carefree nature of youth, and the contrast it cast against Heather's calculated demeanor. She adjusted a chair slightly, placing it just so, a silent demonstration that this space was still hers to inhabit, to navigate, to observe. She noted the gentle sway of Heather's posture as she laughed at a comment Daniel made, the shift in her weight, the subtle glances toward the snack table, always measuring, always aware. Margaret felt the warmth of the day on her skin, the taste of salt in the air, and with each breath she reaffirmed her resolve to watch, to wait, to allow the unfolding of actions without interference, storing every detail for the precise moment when observation would convert into understanding. She refilled her glass, and the sunlight glinted off the condensation on the cup, mirroring the clarity she sought in her own mind. Margaret continued to move about the deck, small adjustments, small gestures, all while keeping her focus on Heather, noting every twitch, every moment of hesitation, every subtle attempt at control. Nothing escaped her attention, yet outwardly, she remained serene, a calm presence amid the playful chaos, a participant only in appearance, fully in control within. Each laugh from the children, each whispered conversation among the adults, each shuffle of plates and napkins was absorbed into Margaret's keen awareness, a tapestry of ordinary actions laced with meaning. She allowed herself a quiet smile, not of victory but of measured patience, knowing the day was unfolding exactly as it should, each moment a piece in the larger picture she was quietly constructing. The breeze lifted the corners of napkins and the edge of the tablecloth, little reminders of the impermanence of each detail, and Margaret felt a subtle satisfaction in the knowledge that she was witnessing, fully present, fully aware, ready to respond with precision when the time came. The family had gathered for a mid-morning stroll along the boardwalk, the sun casting long reflections across the wet sand as small waves rolled to shore. Margaret walked at a measured pace, her sandals crunching softly against the fine grains, each step deliberate, as though testing the rhythm of the day. Heather moved ahead, chatting lightly with the children, her voice smooth, rehearsed, and carefully monitored, each laugh calibrated to maintain appearances. Daniel lingered near the edge of the deck, camera in hand, capturing moments that would later become memories, unaware that Margaret was cataloging each interaction, noting the subtle inflections in Heather's speech, the way she tilted her head, the calculated pauses between sentences. Margaret's eyes followed her daughter-in-law, tracking each glance and gesture, aware that beneath the polite smiles there was a tension she had felt building over months, perhaps years, a quiet undercurrent of control and planning that only she seemed able to perceive. She adjusted a beach umbrella, watching the fabric ripple in the wind, and felt the cool metal under her fingers, grounding her thoughts as she observed the family from this vantage point. Every small detail, The way Heather nudged a child to point toward the water, the careful placement of drinks on the tray, the way she smoothed her sundress, spoke volumes to Margaret about the priorities and intentions Heather harbored, ones that went beyond the ordinary concerns of a vacation day. Margaret paused to tie the ends of a sun scarf, the soft fabric brushing against her wrists, and let her gaze sweep across the poolside, noting the laughter, the playful squeals, the gentle chatter, and the subtle exchanges between Heather and Daniel. She saw the way Heather's eyes flicked toward her occasionally, just enough to test, to measure, to ensure that Margaret remained unaware, or at least compliant, in the orchestration of the day's activities. Margaret walked deliberately toward the small table of snacks, picking up a bottle of iced water and setting it down with exact precision, the clink of glass marking her presence, asserting a quiet, controlled influence over the space. She thought of all the small, consistent acts of care she had extended to the family over the years, and how those acts had been quietly assumed, taken for granted, and perhaps manipulated by Heather's subtle schemes. She sipped her water slowly, savoring the crisp taste, letting the sensation anchor her awareness as she noted the interactions, the subtle power plays, and the layered intentions in the smiles and words that passed between the others. Margaret straightened a chair, aligned the plates and utensils with care, each movement a demonstration of her mindfulness and patience, a quiet signal that she was observing, cataloging, and prepared for whatever would unfold. The sun was higher now, casting brighter light across the family, highlighting the contrast between carefree laughter and the underlying currents that Margaret alone seemed attuned to. She felt a sense of calm, not complacency, a careful patience that allowed her to witness, to understand, to quietly prepare for the moment when observation would transform into action. Every glance, every gesture, every laugh, and every whisper that drifted across the warm air was noted, filed away, and understood, as Margaret maintained her presence, poised, silent, aware, and fully engaged in the subtle, unspoken dynamics of her family around her. Margaret stepped back from the snack table, letting her gaze wander over the sunlit expanse of the resort grounds, taking in the laughter of the children, the shimmer of the pool, and the carefully arranged chairs that framed the family gathering. Each detail seemed ordinary, yet she felt the tension beneath the surface, a subtle weight pressing on the rhythm of the day. She recalled the countless family events she had orchestrated, from beach barbecues to holiday brunches, each one designed to create shared memories, each one an opportunity to nurture connection and joy. Heather moved among the group with deliberate charm, engaging the children, offering drinks and snacks, her movements fluid and controlled, as if performing a part she had rehearsed many times over. Margaret noted the slight hesitation in Heather's gestures, the careful monitoring of where everyone was looking, the subtle way she positioned herself between Daniel and the children at key moments. She walked slowly to the edge of the deck, brushing the coarse wood beneath her fingertips, the sun warming her back, the sound of waves a constant hum in the background, grounding her thoughts as she cataloged each subtle behavior, each unspoken calculation. She poured herself a glass of iced tea and set it down gently, the condensation forming a small pool on the tablecloth, a quiet reminder of the passage of time and the permanence of observation. Margaret allowed her mind to drift briefly to memories of family vacations long past, moments when the laughter had been genuine, when her efforts had been met with gratitude, when she had felt the warmth of connection she now found tinged with uncertainty and careful observation. She adjusted the angle of an umbrella to better shade the seating area, aligning it precisely, noting the way Heather's eyes flicked toward the adjustment, as if measuring her presence, gauging her reactions. Margaret moved among the chairs, picking up stray napkins, aligning the plates and cups with meticulous care, each movement deliberate, a demonstration of her calm, her patience, and her awareness. She observed Daniel as he helped the younger children with a sandcastle, his smile genuine, his laughter free, contrasting with the calculated behaviors of Heather, highlighting the difference between natural engagement and orchestrated interaction. Margaret let her attention expand, cataloging voices, gestures, and expressions, weaving together a map of intention and subtle manipulation that Heather was attempting to execute. The breeze carried the scent of sunscreen and salt, blending with the faint aroma of fresh fruit from the table, a sensory anchor as Margaret maintained her calm, her careful scrutiny, and her quiet presence. She allowed herself a soft smile, not of triumph, but of measured patience, knowing that each observation added to her understanding, that the quiet accumulation of details would provide clarity, insight, and leverage when the time was right. Margaret's movements remained deliberate and smooth, interacting with the environment in a controlled rhythm that mirrored her internal composure, the sunlight casting long shadows that shifted with each passing hour, marking the passage of the day and the steady unfolding of subtle dynamics she now fully understood. The sounds of the ocean, the children's laughter, and the quiet hum of conversation around her all blended into a background that she absorbed and cataloged with precision, each detail noted, each action recorded mentally, allowing her to remain fully present, fully aware, and fully prepared for the unfolding of events that would reveal the true nature of intentions hidden beneath polite smiles and casual interactions. Margaret retreated slightly toward the shaded lounge area, letting her eyes wander over the sparkling water and the colorful beach umbrellas dotting the sand. She recalled the early days of her family vacations, when the laughter was effortless and the moments were captured in photographs that showed genuine happiness, unforced smiles, and eyes that glimmered with delight. The contrast to today was stark, each calculated gesture from Heather highlighting the tension Margaret felt coiled beneath the surface of the day. She took a slow sip of lemonade, feeling the cool liquid slide down her throat, letting her attention focus on small, seemingly mundane details. The arrangement of beach towels, the placement of a beach ball, the way the sunlight reflected off the gentle waves. Each of these observations became markers in Margaret's mental map, allowing her to track Heather's movements and measure the subtle manipulations occurring under the guise of family fun. Daniel was laughing with the children near the water, tossing a frisbee, completely immersed in the carefree moment, unaware of the undercurrents Margaret had begun to discern. Margaret adjusted a chair cushion, smoothing the fabric, her actions deliberate and composed, a quiet assertion of her presence, her awareness, and her control of the immediate environment. Heather passed by, offering a practiced smile, her eyes flicking briefly toward Margaret, perhaps sensing the unspoken observation, though she would never admit it aloud. Margaret allowed herself a soft, measured smile, acknowledging the performance while keeping her own intentions concealed. She thought of all the small acts of care she had extended over the years, from preparing meals to organizing family events, and how these efforts had been quietly assumed, sometimes taken for granted, and now seemed to be weighed against her in subtle, strategic ways. She inhaled deeply, drawing in the salty air and the scent of sunscreen, letting it ground her as she cataloged each movement, each glance, each careful inflection of speech, storing these observations in her mind with the precision of someone who had learned patience through years of experience. Margaret rearranged a sun hat and a beach bag, small adjustments that drew no attention but reinforced her presence, a silent signal that she was attentive and fully engaged. She noted the laughter of the children, the gentle chatter of the adults, the soft shuffle of feet on the sand, and wove these sensory details into a tapestry of awareness that allowed her to remain calm, poised, and fully in control of her observations. Each minute detail of behavior, each subtle glance, and each carefully measured gesture became part of the larger picture Margaret was quietly constructing, allowing her to understand intentions and dynamics that were invisible to others. She sipped her lemonade once more, feeling the cool condensation on her fingers, and settled back slightly, letting her gaze sweep across the beach, observing, recording, and quietly preparing for the precise moment when patience and understanding would allow her to act with clarity and insight, all while maintaining the outward calm of a serene, attentive presence among her family. Margaret stood at the edge of the patio, the sun warm on her back and the gentle hum of the ocean a constant companion, letting her thoughts settle into a careful rhythm. She observed Heather laughing lightly with Daniel as they set up the folding chairs near the volleyball net, noting the precision in every motion Heather executed, as though choreographed for effect. Margaret picked up a small notebook from the table, flipping it open and pretending to jot notes about supplies and schedules, but inside, She was cataloging every glance, every subtle shift in posture, every pause between words. She noticed how Heather positioned herself strategically between the children and Daniel, how she smiled with measured brightness, all the while unaware that Margaret had already anticipated these movements. Margaret sipped her iced tea, feeling the cool liquid slide down her throat, steadying her focus, sharpening her awareness, letting each detail register clearly in her mind. She thought of the years she had spent orchestrating family vacations, the lunches, the dinners, the careful planning, and realized how those same skills now served her in observing Heather without revealing the depth of her attention. Each laugh, each gentle comment from Heather, became data, a pattern Margaret traced with patience and precision. She adjusted the position of a sun umbrella slightly, aligning it with the edge of the lounge chairs, each movement deliberate, a quiet assertion of her presence, of her awareness, a subtle claim over the space she occupied. The children ran along the shore, collecting shells and building sandcastles, their joy contrasting with the undercurrent of tension Margaret observed. She inhaled deeply, the salty breeze filling her lungs, letting the air anchor her thoughts as she continued to watch, catalog, and understand the interactions unfolding around her. Heather paused to offer a snack to one of the children, and Margaret noted the controlled timing of her actions, the careful placement of each item, the measured brightness of her smile. Margaret adjusted a chair cushion and straightened a small stack of towels, small movements that drew no attention but reinforced her calm authority over the space. Each detail, each gesture, each unspoken interaction became a thread in Margaret's mental map, weaving a tapestry of observation and understanding that allowed her to remain composed, poised, and fully engaged in the unfolding dynamics. The sun rose higher, reflecting off the waves, casting light across the family, illuminating the contrast between innocence and subtle calculation. Margaret allowed herself a quiet smile, not of triumph, but of quiet patience, knowing that each moment of observation, each careful note in her mind, was preparing her for the right moment to act with clarity and precision. She let the sounds of the ocean, the laughter of the children, and the gentle hum of conversation flow around her, absorbing every detail, cataloging every movement, remaining fully present, fully aware, and fully in control of her own experience amidst the carefully orchestrated chaos. Margaret took a step back and let her gaze sweep over the children as they ran along the water's edge, their laughter echoing against the soft crash of waves. She noticed how Heather adjusted the sun hat of one of the younger kids with deliberate care, tilting it just so to block the sun, a gesture that seemed nurturing on the surface, but Margaret had learned to read the underlying intent behind such careful movements. She moved quietly toward the shaded lounge, picking up a lightweight beach chair and placing it precisely in line with the others, her hands steady, her movements deliberate, a subtle assertion of control over the space she occupied without drawing attention to herself. Daniel wandered by, offering to help a child build a sandcastle, smiling as he worked, unaware that Margaret's attention encompassed every gesture and glance, cataloging the orchestration unfolding in front of her. Margaret sipped her iced tea, feeling the condensation cool her fingers, and let the gentle warmth of the sun anchor her thoughts as she mentally traced the patterns of Heather's behavior, noticing the calculated timing of her smiles, the measured laughter, and the careful positioning near the family members she sought to influence. She recalled the earlier days when family vacations had been unremarkable, filled with simple joy, unpolished moments, and she contrasted them silently with the present, where every movement seemed engineered, every expression curated, a dance of appearances carefully rehearsed. Margaret adjusted a folded beach towel on the lounge chair, smoothing the edges, a small act that drew no attention but served to reaffirm her presence, her calm observation, and her awareness of the dynamics at play. Heather paused briefly to offer a drink to Daniel, her eyes flicking toward Margaret, a flash of awareness crossing her expression before it was masked again with practiced brightness. Margaret allowed herself a small, measured smile, not of triumph, but of quiet understanding, noting that every subtle reaction added to her growing insight into the careful choreography Heather was attempting to maintain. She leaned lightly on the railing, the texture of the wood firm beneath her palms, feeling the heat of the sun on her back, letting the rhythmic sound of waves wash over her, grounding her thoughts, sharpening her awareness, and reinforcing her calm. She thought of the years of small, consistent efforts she had made to nurture family bonds, how each thoughtful action had been quietly absorbed, and now she considered how that same attentiveness could allow her to perceive the layers of intention beneath Heather's careful demeanor. Margaret arranged the cups and plates on the side table, the light catching the condensation and glinting like small reminders of the present moment, each action deliberate, controlled, and intentional, a reflection of her composed internal state. She observed Heather moving through the family with poise, noting the way she directed attention and subtly guided interactions, and yet Margaret felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that she had cataloged every nuance, every shift, every understated effort to influence the environment. Margaret let her eyes drift across the sunlit sand, watching the children, the water, the playful exchange of laughter, and she carried herself with the steady, observant patience that allowed her to remain fully present, fully aware, and prepared for the precise moment when the accumulated understanding of the day would allow her to act with clarity and insight, all while maintaining the outward serenity of someone fully in command of her space and her perception. Margaret moved deliberately toward the table set near the shade of the cabana, her eyes scanning each member of the family, as if noting invisible currents in the air. Heather was arranging the plates, her movements precise and careful, smiling at Daniel as he helped the children with a frisbee, unaware that Margaret was cataloging each subtle gesture, each shift in posture, each carefully timed laugh. She picked up a small tray with cups of water and carried it past Heather, the sound of the glass lightly clinking against the tray marking her presence without a word, a quiet assertion of attention that did not go unnoticed. Margaret paused, letting her gaze sweep across the sand, the sparkling waves, the scattered shells, and the children building sandcastles, noticing the contrast between the carefree energy of youth and the careful orchestration of Heather's adult interactions. She adjusted the napkins and placed them neatly, aligning the utensils with precision, each action deliberate, controlled, demonstrating calm authority while remaining outwardly unremarkable. Heather's eyes flicked toward her briefly, a hint of awareness crossing her face, but she quickly masked it with a practiced smile, continuing to direct the flow of conversation and activity among the family. Margaret sipped her iced tea, letting the cold liquid refresh her senses, and in the pause she cataloged each movement, each glance, each carefully measured expression as though assembling a map of intentions hidden beneath polite gestures. She thought of the vacation she had planned, the effort she had put into creating joy and shared memories, and how those same attentions had been quietly assumed, manipulated at times, and now she observed with patience and precision. Margaret adjusted a lounge chair, smoothing the cushion, aligning it perfectly with the others, a subtle demonstration of her presence and control over the space, a quiet signal that she remained fully aware and fully engaged. She let her eyes drift over Daniel, laughing freely with the children, contrasting his natural engagement with Heather's calculated maneuvers, each observation adding clarity to her understanding. The sun climbed higher, warming her back, glinting off the water, illuminating every small detail of Heather's interactions, the slight hesitations, the subtle guidance, the careful timing, and Margaret absorbed it all with a calm, measured patience. She straightened a towel and picked up a stray sun hat, placing it neatly in line with the lounge chairs, each movement deliberate, reinforcing the quiet command of her presence. Margaret allowed herself a soft smile, composed, measured, not of victory but of awareness, letting the family's laughter, the children's cries of delight, and the gentle lapping of the waves flow around her, integrating each sensory detail into her understanding, cataloging every nuance, every intention, and every subtle influence, fully present, fully observant, and ready to translate the careful observations into clarity when the moment required it. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, Margaret allowed herself a moment to pause, feeling the warmth on her back and the gentle sway of the palm trees in the evening breeze. The children were gathering seashells near the water, their laughter echoing softly across the sand, and Daniel was kneeling beside them, offering gentle guidance with a light-hearted smile. Heather walked past, adjusting the position of a chair for one of the children, her movements precise, her expression carefully neutral. But Margaret had already seen the small tells, the subtle hesitations, the measured timing that revealed her intentions. Margaret leaned against the railing of the cabana, letting the sun glint off her silver hair, and observed quietly, noting every exchange, every glance, every carefully placed gesture. She thought of all the years she had quietly managed family dynamics, all the small acts of care and patience she had extended, and realized that these years of observation and understanding had prepared her for this moment of clarity. She adjusted the placement of the napkins and glasses on the side table, each motion deliberate, precise, and calm, reinforcing her presence while allowing her to continue observing without interference. The air was filled with the soft rhythm of the waves and the muted chatter of the family, and Margaret absorbed it all, cataloging each detail in her mind, building a complete picture of the subtle dynamics at play. Heather smiled brightly at Daniel, leaning slightly to help him with the younger child, but Margaret's keen awareness noted the precise angle of the head, the deliberate pause, and the controlled timing of each action. She sipped her iced tea, feeling the cool liquid refresh her senses, and let her gaze sweep across the deck and the beach, taking in the contrast between the carefree energy of the children and the calculated motions of Heather. Margaret moved a chair slightly to align it perfectly with the others, brushed a speck of sand from the tabletop, and adjusted the position of a folded beach towel, each small act reinforcing her calm authority, her observant presence, and her readiness to act when the moment presented itself. She allowed herself a quiet smile, not of triumph, but of measured patience, noting the subtle shifts in Heather's behavior as the afternoon light shifted across the sand. The children's laughter, the gentle call of a distant seagull, and the soft lapping of the waves provided a steady soundtrack as Margaret continued to catalog every detail, every glance, and every gesture with precision. She considered the years she had spent nurturing family connections, the countless meals, trips, and celebrations she had orchestrated, and recognized that this quiet attentiveness, this patient observation, was her strength. Margaret remained fully present, her movements smooth and deliberate, her awareness complete, allowing her to witness the unfolding of intentions, to understand every nuance, and to maintain a composed, serene presence that carried the quiet authority of someone who had long mastered the art of observation, poised to respond with clarity, insight, and grace when the time was right.